Coming up on this episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
I see a post 2 years into their journey, and she said, we've had to make the difficult decision to sell our house so we can continue to afford care for my daughter. I can't imagine that if you don't really know how to work the system, I just don't know how you would do it.
That podcast is coming right up. First up, let me tell you about a couple of our resource partners.
You've probably heard me say this before, but most of the things that kill us are preventable, and that's exactly why I put my heart in his hands, in his care. I'm talking about Dr. Robert Todd Hurst and HealthSpan MD. He's my cardiologist because I appreciate his holistic approach to heart health. There's nothing out there like HealthSpan MD. His AFib reversal program, his CAD reversal program. Get the link on the resources page at learnfrompeoplewholivedit.com. At Metal Joe, they sell more than shirts. They sell apparel with a purpose. In fact, my favorite hoodie in my closet is a Mental Joe hoodie. They help out G.I. Joes to the average Joes one t-shirt at a time. With every purchase, you help them support organizations that can provide services to help others get out of their heads and into their bodies through plant medicines, equine therapy, yoga, and other non-traditional mental health treatments. Link to them. Pick out your favorite t-shirt or hoodie right now at learnfrompeoplewholivedit.com/resources.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
All right, I am really interested to see where this goes. This is going to look and feel like a very different Learn from People Who Lived It today. Now, you're all going to recognize Romy in just a second because she's been on the podcast before. As a matter of fact, when she was on just a few episodes ago, we kind of hashed out this.
I might add that I felt completely normal. Like I felt completely exactly the same as I did the day before that I heard you have colon cancer. So it was even harder to comprehend because I felt fine. I was acting fine. Like nothing had changed. One day I was fine. The next day, a doctor is telling me what I knew was probably that I had a year and a half to live.
So now she's back to give us a little bit more of an in-depth look on exactly what her foundation is all about. And so I want to welcome Romy to the big stage there. Let us be side by side. How are you?
I'm good, Matthew. How are you?
I'm awesome. You're in San Diego, so you're a little bit better than the rest of us.
Well, I did take that 6:10 a.m. flight here this morning, so I'll be really good tomorrow.
Okay, fair enough. There was an article in Voyage Phoenix magazine. I don't know if you recall this, but you'd given somebody an interview and you said the following. You said, in addition, the financial disaster that accompanies many chronic illnesses can be life-altering. Our family was forced to downsize our home, cut back all expenses. Our children had to adjust to a new lifestyle, and over time, we wiped out our savings, plus the kids' college funds, all in a quest to fight for survival. My marriage was also part of the collateral damage. After 23 years of marriage and 3 kids, a marriage that was on shaky ground to start crumbled in the midst of treatment. Cancer is a family affair, and it spares no one close to you. So when you hear those words, what do you think about? Because I'm sure this article was, some time ago.
That's amazing that you found that. It was a long time ago, and you refreshed my memory because I forgot about it. But it is a family affair. You and I talked on our last podcast that it doesn't just affect the person that's going through it. Oftentimes it affects the people around them more than the person that is actually affected with a chronic illness. And in my case, when we speak, because we're talking mostly about the foundation and how it got started, very few of us talk about how expensive it is to be sick. It is very expensive, and not expensive in the fun way, not in the fun shopping spree way. So the question I get all the time is, if you have insurance, how does this happen? Like, people are just perplexed how this happens. So just as a sidebar, my day job, my career has always been spent in helping employers provide health insurance to their employees and other employee benefits.
So you're in the space a little bit. You're in the space.
I'm in the space 100%. Like, I intimately understand how it works. And I remember one day sitting on my bed, there were just bills. Like, it was just a sea of paper on a king size bed, trying to figure out where do I start? I have a $50 bill from this provider, a $10,000 bill from this provider. Like, it was mind blowing. And it was a day that it was during chemo that I was doing this. And so my brain wasn't functioning on all cylinders. And so I would just toss things and I would go, I'll deal with it tomorrow, because I just didn't have the headspace.
Of course.
But in the course of the first couple of years of my diagnosis, I think we were out of pocket close to $40,000 in just 2 years. And the reason behind that was I had a very high out-of-pocket maximum. The premium that I paid for my insurance was very high. But one of my initial surgeries, the one that we talked about on the podcast being the life-saving surgery, my insurance company deemed the majority of that experimental, which meant my insurance company was not going to pay for it. So you add that into the mix, and, so I had to go to San Diego a couple of days early because that's where the surgery was going to be. And they came in and they said, here's the deal. Your insurance company is not approving this portion of the surgery. What do you want to do? And of course you say, I'll figure it out later. You have to do it. We didn't get this far to turn around because my insurance company isn't going to pay for it. And so there's a lot of components to the insurance game. And I didn't have time to fight with my insurance company, so I did it. So that was a component. Then we get to the next component, that there were only so many centers in the country that would perform what I needed done. And none of them were in my home state. So I was traveling back and forth to San Diego. I was putting my family up in a hotel. There was airfare. There were follow-up visits. And you start doing that back to back to back. A lot of people can withstand that for a couple of years. But when you're doing it for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it just crashes down on you. So I think like in 5 years, we were at about $100,000 out of pocket. And, the first thing that had to go was the big house. And the kids had to cut I felt like I was always saying, we can't afford to do this. And they would be like, but why? We could afford to do it last year.
Right.
Like, things have changed. So I really thought that I was suffering alone. I thought this must just be a one-off. I had savings. I just didn't think this was happening to anyone else. And I am an avid reader. And so there was an author that I was following on Facebook, and she was a really, I don't want to say well-known, she was a well-known author in the kind of indie space that I was into. She sold a ton of books, and her daughter was diagnosed with liver cancer. And okay. I saw a post. Her daughter was being treated at UCLA. She lived in Las Vegas. I see a post 2 years into their journey, and she said, we've had to make the difficult decision to sell our house so we can continue to afford care for my daughter. And it was at that moment that a light bulb went off, and I was like, this is insane. This is not just me. These are people like me that have worked for years and years and saved, and we've done everything that, financial people tell you to do, and we're still sunk. And that's when I started Wight Horse. And I started Wight Horse because I understand the system. I understand how to maneuver it. And if I can't imagine that if you don't really know how to work the system, I just don't know how you would do it.
So let me ask you a question. And the foundation you're talking about, the Wight Horse Foundation, you set this up to basically help people navigate the situation that you were once in and other people like that. What do you think? Boy, this could be a whole probably podcast by itself. What could the insurance companies be doing to make it easier on patients and the clients they serve, the people like you? Because here's what I imagine. I imagine it's not just a simple, well, let me call this toll-free number, and Bonnie answers the phone, and Bonnie's like, yeah, no problem, Romy. We got this all worked out. We'll get it. Here we go. Thanks for calling, right? I imagine it's phone tag, it's messages, it's hold times, it's, well, we need to look into this, and we'll get back to you in 3 days. And so there's this constant follow-up, and you're already in a place where you don't want to be thinking about anything, where let me rephrase, you shouldn't be thinking about anything other than your health and getting better, but instead you're being given this massive, massive stress ball that you're supposed to carry with you, oh, by the way, while you fight cancer. So what could the insurance companies be doing to make it easier? And I guess I'm interested in your perspective from the person on the inside. And maybe they've already taken some strides, but let's walk that out.
So that is that question is extremely loaded. So remember, I'm gonna answer this from my day job, from my profession, as well as I'm gonna flip to my personal side, because there's two different positions.
Okay.
So with where we're at today in our healthcare system and the cost of it and how many middlemen are involved and the players and everybody needs a cut, the costs have just gotten exorbitant. So from the insurance company's perspective, they can't be loss leaders on every person, right? They have to make a profit to keep their doors open. So they have controls around several different areas to try and keep the reins in. Okay, that's number one. Number two, they are trying to make a profit. They are not trying to sell you insurance and lose, just like any insurance. Your car insurance, you get into an accident, premium goes up because they need to stay whole. But insurance companies do not pay for a lot of the things that people do when they have a chronic illness. So they don't pay for travel. They don't pay for hotels if you're outside of an area that doesn't perform your service. If anything is even remotely experimental, that is not covered. If you want to go to acupuncture because you have pain, if you want to see some alternate form of healer, if you want to do anything holistic, you're on your own. And so the patient then gets put in a really difficult position where they're picking and choosing what it is they can do, because they know with traditional medicine, you're going to have a high deductible, you're going to have a high out-of-pocket max, you're going to meet that. And once you meet that out-of-pocket max, the insurance company will pay 100% for the rest of that plan year. So it's hard for a lot of people to say, oh, I'm going to go to acupuncture once a week and spend $100. Oh, I'm going to go to therapy once a week and spend another $100, because now you're just adding, insult to injury. And so to answer the question of what can the insurance company do, part of me is that's not their core principle.
Totally get it.
They're not trying not to make it easy for you, but they're not. Here's a good example. I'm still dealing with this today.
Still?
Oh yeah, because okay. I have to receive follow-up care. So I went to annual scans to monitor my status 2 years ago. And I always do it in October. So my appointment was last week. And a couple of years ago, I developed an allergy to the contrast dye in CT scans. So I can't do a CT scan anymore. And so the next level is a PET scan. So last week, I'm, all geared up. The anxiety is at an all-time high. The appointment's on Thursday. I can, barely speak on Wednesday because I'm having so much anxiety, scanxiety, because I have to go in the next day. And I get a call at 3:00 and they said, your insurance company won't pre-authorize this scan. And I'm like, that's insane. What am I supposed to do? So the doctor did what they call a peer-to-peer review. So doctor to doctor, and explained why I needed this PET scan. And they still said no. So then I knew, because I'm in the industry, that I could then go on to an expedited appeal. So this is multiple phone calls, multiple hours. Found out yesterday that somebody dropped the ball and the appeal was never actually received. So we had to start over again. So now we're at October. So now I'm a week past when I was supposed to do the scan. And if the appeal doesn't go through, then I'm just going to do a CT scan without the contrast. And that's not going to show clear enough pictures. And so then at that point, they will say the CT scan didn't show clear enough pictures. We have to go to the next level of imaging, and then the PET scan will get approved. So a lot of it is a game. And sometimes
it's so stupid because the company is literally pissing away money. Like they waste their time on round one, which you and your doctors both know isn't going to work. That's the part that's so I'm going to lose my mind on this podcast. That's the part that's so fucked up. It's like you cost yourself more money with some of these dumb rules, and it must work out in their favor in order for them to keep it going and keep doing it. But for me, and you probably feel the same way, it's mind-blowing to me that an insurance company would have more say over your doctor. And an insurance company be like, well, I know Mr. Dr. Robert Todd Hurst said you needed this thing, but Joe over here in the corner office at State Farm, he doesn't feel that way. And so you're not going to get approved for it. And we wish you the best of luck. Like, I mean, isn't that infuriate you?
It infuriates me. I can't even go there. It makes me so angry. It makes me so angry. And so that's what Wight Horse does, because the person that doesn't understand the system will just back away and say, okay, I can't do it. So I don't know what in this particular situation they would do, but they just will say, my insurance company didn't approve it. So, I just won't go do that test. And we need to help people, and we need to educate them, and we need to help them through the system. It's as simple as that. Like, it's so difficult. So one of our recipients right now is the mom of a 5-year-old. I believe he's 5. And he was diagnosed with leukemia in January. Oh, man. And so she lives in Dallas. And so they took him to Children's Hospital of Dallas, which is the premier children's hospital. So the hospital had said they were going to make an agreement with the insurance company because it was out of network for their insurance. They said, don't worry, we've got an exception.
Famous last words, don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry. And they've agreed to pay these claims in network. So here we are. It's June. Okay. I get a call from her. And she was like, can you please help me? I'm ready to pull my hair out. I am getting bills that I'm at $40,000 so far. And I don't understand why I'm getting billed this much, because our maximum should be $9,000. So I spent hours weeding through all of her claims. And
because that was her deductible. Is that right? Is that my understanding?
Okay. Yeah. And so I spent hours weeding through these claims, figuring out how they were paid. And I figured out what had happened. So the hospital was getting the discounted Blue Cross amount. So they were paying the hospital in network, but they were still charging her out-of-network deductible and her out-of-network, out-of-pocket maximum, which is unlimited. So this poor woman just got bamboozled because the hospital is getting paid what the hospital needs to get paid, but she's left out in the cold. So we haven't come to a conclusion yet on her case. I wrote a letter and I appealed it for her, and it is in review because I went back to the hospital and I said, can you please write off the difference in her in-network and out-of-network, out-of-pocket maxes, because this was your error that you only covered one of the check boxes when you made the agreement.
Yeah. And we're waiting.
We're waiting. So it's, I think that's where there's a misconception. It's not always just the insurance companies. There's a lot of hands in the pot at every point in the process, that if one of them goes off of the rails, the patient can be left holding a really large bill.
I have so many questions. Okay, where do I start? Okay, I want to start with two things. I want to make sure I highlight exactly what the Wight Horse Foundation does and like who would be a good person to reach out to you. So remember that. As people are getting bills, as you're getting bills, as this woman in Dallas is getting her bills for her kids, what are some best practices? Because listen, you know the statistic. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the actual number is, but it's super high. Most people don't even have $1,000 in the savings account for an oh shit moment, let alone I've got cancer or leukemia, and now the bills are looking more like $40,000. So. Right. What kinds of advice do you give to people about all of these bills? Like, I would imagine as they start coming in, let me give you some context here. Like, do I call them and say, hey, look, I see the bill. I see it's 17 grand. I'm not Bill Gates. I don't have 17 grand to write you a check right now. Can we work something out? Like, do you advise people to start working on payment arrangements with folks all the time? Is there situations where hospitals will reduce costs if they know you're like on the struggle bus financially? And, here's the thing, like, you could be a family of four in a fairly big city in America, and let's say the family of four makes a couple $100,000 a year. That's still not enough money to pay off a $40,000 hospital bill. It's not even close. So, holy shit, that was a long question. But how do you advise people in that case? And then who's the right person to reach out to the Wight Horse Foundation?
So I'm going to try and answer this as best I can, because each situation is a little bit different. So First off, we advise people, don't ever pay a medical bill on your credit card. Just don't do it ever, because you don't want to pay. It's so hard to get a refund. So don't pay it. If you can't pay it, don't pay it, because we need to help you work out a negotiated payment plan, or we need to ask them to write off a portion of the bill. So if you pay it up front, it's gone. We can't get that back. That's number one. Number two, we need to look at all of the claims and make sure that they are being paid accurately. The error rate is really, really high. So you can't always look at every single claim, but for the large dollar claims, you can dig in to see if it's paid correctly. That's number two. Number three, fortunately, a couple of years ago, a law was passed that any medical bill, $500 and below, cannot go to a credit agency. So it doesn't matter what provider it is. If it's tagged medical, it will not hit your credit. and
below $500.
below $500. So we're hoping that that number goes up, but at least it's a start. And then the second part of that bill that was passed, and this happened after my situation, but medical providers cannot send any bill of any amount to a collection agency or to a credit bureau until it's been 1 year past due. So think of your mortgage. If you don't pay it on the 31st day, your credit's getting dinged. So medical has a safety net that you have a year to kind of figure it out, which is fabulous. There is some legislation that we are hearing that they are trying to make headway on where no medical debt can hit your credit. I don't have high hopes that that's going to happen, because then no one's going to pay their medical bills and the hospital systems are going to, there's going to be anarchy. So I don't have hope for that, but everything can be negotiated. You can try and make a payment plan for $10 a month. Just anything that's showing that you are in good faith trying to pay, most providers will work with you. Some will not. Mayo Clinic would be an example of they want your entire bill paid off in 1 year. So some prestigious institutions, they're not going to be as flexible as a community hospital. The last part of that is, this is a very little known fact, I think, that more hospitals than not are considered nonprofit hospitals.
Yeah.
And they have to offer charity care. And the way that they work charity care is it's at 500% of the poverty, 400 or 500% of the poverty level. And it's based on your number of dependents. So we helped somebody recently who was making $60,000 a year, but had 3 dependents. They qualified and they were able to get their bill reduced by 80%. It's a lot, but most people don't know about it. And the hospital is not coming to your room and handing you that form. It is a secret and you got to figure it out on your own. So
this is why you're valuable, right? This is why you're valuable.
Right. So we have 3 pillars that we focus on. Education is one, because knowledge is power. And then the second is patient advocacy. We will jump in and advocate for you. And we will also try and help you advocate for yourself and ask questions, get those second opinions. Because a lot of people, do you know anyone that has gone to 20, 30 doctors trying to chase down a diagnosis? And mostly because they're just not getting good direction. And so their care is so fragmented that they can't get a diagnosis. And so we do a lot of education around, how do you be your own advocate? How can you get to the end goal in the most efficient way without destroying your savings? So that's the second pillar. And then the third is that we do offer financial grants. We can't pay off the majority of people's total debt. Nobody can. It's just such a huge problem. But we have helped a lot of people financially to help them get to a point where they can get on a payment plan, or maybe they need something that is not covered by insurance, and then we will help pay for that. So those are the 3 different areas that we focus on.
So if you are drawn into this podcast today because maybe you're going through a really tough medical diagnosis, bills are piling up, and you're kind of like, shit, what do I do now? This is exactly the person that should reach out to you.
Yes.
I will link in the show notes. And because I would think all three of those things would be beneficially for just about anybody, because sometimes the education piece is all you need. Sometimes you just need to know what you don't know, and then you're like, okay, I can navigate this by myself.
Right.
But if they don't, or in my case, I would be like, can you please just help me, because you know more than I do. You can be our advocate. And then the other thing with the grants, which I think is super generous, is, I do a lot of work in this space with like homeless and houseless populations. And what I hear a lot in these meetings is like people are literally a medical bill away from being kicked out of their house, their apartments, some of these things. And so to me, that's where, like, I get it. You can't pay the $40,000 chemo treatment bill, but maybe you can give me a grant for $2,000 that I can use to pay my, so that I can have money to pay my mortgage and chip away at this bill. Am I hearing that right?
You are. And so in one part of your question, you asked, what type of person do we focus on? Wight Horse focuses on the people that are insured and somebody in the household is working, because that's kind of that sandwich group that gets hit the worst, because we make too much money to qualify for any kind of aid, but we don't make enough money that we can just self-fund the whole thing. We're not super wealthy and we can't throw $100,000 around here and there. But yet we're close. But trying to find help is hard. There is help out there for people below a certain income level.
Yeah.
And there is some help out there for you and I. We just don't know where to find it. And so Wight Horse just accumulates a lot of different resources where we can pull several entities together to help one person. And we did that. I can share a great story as to how we did that. So if you remember from our first podcast, the big surgery that I needed that only 10 people in the country did, through that community, I got a phone call a couple of years later. And it was from a woman that led a colon cancer support group. And if you can believe this, an 11-year-old was diagnosed with colon cancer. 11. Wow. And his disease presented in a similar way that mine did. So he needed that exact same surgery. But because he was 11, there was only one pediatric surgeon in the country that would do it. So my choice was 10, his was 1.
Wow.
He lived in Northern California. The surgeon was in North Carolina. So his grandmother was raising him because his parents had fallen into drugs. So she had taken him and the brother in. She was a blue collar worker. And she just was the most beautiful woman. She was going to do whatever she had to do to help this beautiful boy. And so we pulled together a couple of different foundations that came together to help her get housing in North Carolina, because they were going to be there for like a month.
Right.
Our foundation bought them first class airfare, not because we wanted them to travel in style, but this surgery has an incision from your breastbone down to your pelvic bone. And there was no way that this child was going to be able to travel after this surgery sitting straight up in coach on a 6-hour flight. He needed the space. He needed to be reclined. And so we did that. Another foundation pitched in to pay for their incidentals while they were there, because they had gone through everything else. They didn't have the extras. And, she unfortunately, he passed away 2 years after that surgery, but she still messages me and she was like, I've grappled back and forth with, did I make the right decision? Did I go too far trying to save him? She said, and at the end of the day, he knew that I did. See, this will make me tear up. It just is so sad, but she did everything she could. And she was like, I couldn't have done it without you guys. She couldn't have done it alone.
It's so critical that people use their community and use their resources. And you and I both know this because we've talked about it before, but when you get into a situation like this one, so difficult, you really do kind of feel like you're on an island. And it's crazy because it couldn't be further from the truth, right? There's millions of people that are getting cancer diagnoses all the time. You know, I mean, like, this is unfortunately, it's a common thing. And so statistically, we know we're not alone, but somehow we feel like we're alone and we go, I guess I'll just navigate this by myself. But, you know, you at the Wight Horse Foundation, the crew at Eric's house that we've talked about before, when you experience sudden death due to addiction or suicide, like, these are the moments where people must step outside of themselves and reach out to their community. And this is why it's so cool that there's people like you out there doing this work, because people need you. The only reason they haven't reached out to you is because they didn't know about you. They didn't know that this kind of a thing was available, which is why we're doing this podcast today, to let people know that there are resources like this available. And there's folks like you who totally get it, who want to help other people get it so they can move through this thing in a little easier way. That's probably the way to put it, right? It's still going to suck, still going to be hard, but it's going to be a little bit easier. At what stage of the game do you want people to reach out to you and ask for help? Right, like cancer diagnosis happens and call you, or when is a good time to reach out to you, Romy, and you know, the foundation?
So I will start by saying that nothing happens immediately when it comes to bills and the way claims are processed. So the day that you are diagnosed with cancer, you don't have a bill in your mailbox. And one of the things that I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it, the GoFundMes, the day that somebody is diagnosed with something or the day that somebody is in an accident, is a knee-jerk reaction because you have no idea if your insurance is covering 100% of that. You don't know until the bills come in. So I understand why people do it, but it's not necessary because typically you're getting overfunded in a lot of situations. And so the money that people are donating may not go towards medical expenses because your insurance company may be better than mine. And you may only be out of pocket $5,000 and you've raised $50,000. So you don't know anything day one. You don't know anything until a couple of months down the road, until you have a treatment plan and you start understanding what the financial side of it is. Okay. So we always say, don't panic. If you're diagnosed with cancer tomorrow, that's where your focus is, on your health. Don't worry about the bills. Now, in the back of your mind, be smart, ask questions, but you don't need to panic. So it's once the expenses start coming in, that's when you would reach out. Okay. And the other thing that everybody should do, whether you've never had a claim or you're facing, hundreds of thousands of dollars of claims, you have to understand your medical insurance. You have to sign up for their online portal. You have to go there. You have to read it and understand what it's going to pay for, because people pay for stuff out of their pocket all the time when the insurance company should pay for it. So,
because it's just easier. And I'll give you an example there. I had to go in and get an MRI for my back. And going through the insurance company, it was a gigantic pain in the butt. They turned it down and they basically said, no, we're not going to approve this thing. And what was so fascinating, getting back to how insurance companies just waste money, was if I was going to use my insurance, the MRI was going to cost me, I think, $400. I got an MRI, cash pay. I asked for the cash price and it was like $260.
Right.
that I paid. So with my insurance, I could write a check for $400, or I could be a cash paying customer and it would be $260. Somebody explain that to me like I'm 4 years old, because I don't get it. I don't get it.
Do you want me to explain it to you like you're 4 years old?
Yes.
Okay. So every insurance company contracts with providers.
Got it.
And each insurance company has a different contract than the next insurance company.
Okay.
So the way it works,
all the Banner, all the people.
right. So your $400 example, if you were with United Healthcare, you might be paying $500 if you were with Cigna. You might be paying $300 if you were with Blue Cross. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Okay. And you might be paying $300 if you go to a Chandler hospital. You might be paying $400 if you go to downtown Phoenix. Like, there's zero consistency. So that's just what you have to remember. There's no consistency. The reason your cash pay price is so much less expensive is because that provider is getting paid on that day. They are not waiting to submit a claim and wait for the insurance company to pay them. It is immediate cash on the books. And so it's worth it to them to get that cash up front for less, because they know there are a lot of other bills that are going to go into the bad revenue pile that they're never going to get paid on. Okay. And the only problem with that is, if you're only going to do that once in a year, it's fine. But if you're somebody that is constantly receiving care, your cash pay isn't accumulating towards your deductible or your out-of-pocket maximum. So you're never going to max out either of those two things. And so we don't ever recommend you doing that if you have a hospital stay on the horizon that you know is going to automatically, allow you to hit those maximums where the insurance then pays 100%. So you got to do it smart. So if you don't think you're ever you don't need more care during that year, do the cash pay price. But if you're like me and you know that you're going in and you're always hitting that out-of-pocket max, I'm not cash paying anything because I need it to credit to my insurance.
Okay. As we wrap up, and we urge people to look into the Wight Horse Foundation, sorry. Is there one common misconception out there? Is there like one roadblock that you see more than other things that you can help us maybe debunk, or I think you understand where I'm going?
Yeah. I don't think there's one. I think that we have made it so confusing for the lay person to understand that it would be like me trying to fix my car, that I would have to do it myself, where I go to a mechanic, I trust that I'm going to pay them whatever to fix my car because I don't even know where to start.
Right.
So we've made it so complicated that most people don't understand it, and it just hurts their head. And so they just take it and they're like, I'll just pay it, or I'll go to collections. It'll ruin my credit. Yeah, I don't think it's just one thing. It's just a lack of knowledge. And in addition, it's expensive. I mean,
and it's a language that not a lot of people understand, right? That's the other thing, is that the language they use in that space is not commonplace for all of us.
No. And the majority of medical providers are going to be so much more apt to work with you than the majority of the other people that we pay bills to. They are sensitive to your situation. They're going to do whatever they can to help you. Medical providers usually are not putting a lien on your home. They are not coming in the middle of the night and taking your car. So the misconception is if I don't pay this on time, the sky is going to fall down. That typically is not going to happen. So my advice would be take a step back, breathe, just talk to your providers, be honest, tell them what's going on, and, come to a resolution, because I promise nothing bad immediately is going to happen. You have some time to figure it out.
Okay, it's good advice. The Wight Horse Foundation. We'll link to them in our show notes. You just want to throw out the website really quick, just in case anybody's like, man, I ain't going to no damn show notes to get a link. Just tell me right now. Yes. I'm listening right now.
Okay, it's Wight Horse, WIGHT, horse, HORSE.com.
There it is. And really, you're open to working with just about anybody. And just so they understand kind of how it's going to work, they get in contact with you. What is sort of like the first 3 steps for somebody that you onboard?
So on our website, there's a tab that says how to apply for help. And the first step is just give us a little bit of your story, high-level overview, and then somebody from our team will contact you and we'll ask you more questions so that we can really understand your situation. Okay. And then we will go from there. So it's super easy. It's not like a 10-page application. You just call us, and we cannot help everybody, but we certainly can point people in the right direction if we're not a fit. They might be eligible for a lot of other programs that will be able to give them more financial aid because of their income level. Okay. And so we'll steer them in the right place.
Well, and conversely, the other side of this is if you're somebody who's listening to this podcast and it speaks to you and you really like the work that Romy's doing and her team are doing, consider supporting their work and consider supporting them so that they can offer these grants to families who are in the midst of the worst possible moments of their lives. And, because we might not be able to fix everything, but we could take a few things off the plate to make this already awful situation a little bit more tolerable, right? And that's at the end of the day what we're trying to do. It's like, I can't wipe the slate clean, I can't fix everything, but I can make it easier for you to go through this.
Absolutely. You said that beautifully.
All right. Well, listen, what do you have planned today in San Diego? Are you going surfing? Are you going whale watching? Are you going to go look at seals down there at what are you doing?
In La Jolla? Well, I don't know what it's like out now, but the fog was just amazing when I flew in. Oh my gosh, so foggy. So I'm going to finish my work day. I'm in my San Diego office today. And then I think I'll go pick up my daughter and we might do a little dinner on the beach, pick up some takeout and just feel the sand. It's my happy place.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the cast again.
You're welcome.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
So almost every week of my life for the last 2 years, somebody will ask me about the retreat that changed my life. And I'm so proud to present Spirit Quest as one of our official resource partners. Founded in 2007, it's the holistic wellness center that changed my life, helped me overcome anxiety, helped me work through conflict, gave me all these tools to manage stress, and they would love to do the same thing for you. To connect to Spirit Quest, click the link on our resources tab at learnfrompeoplewholivedit.com, and when you get on the phone with them, make sure you mention that you heard it on Learn from People Who Lived It.